reports.
We have had those grenade attacks. The grenade attacks have been taking place in this country. We have thwarted very many attempts to injure Kenyans through hand grenades.
This is the government's response on the latest grenade attack in Mombasa, barely 2 days after the American government warned of an imminent terror attack on Kenya's coastal city. Acting Head of Civil Service and the Chair of the National Security Council, Francis Kimemia, for the second day running, dismissing a travel advisory issued by the Americans as malicious.
So I don't think one incident which is not related to the American threat, can't be an issue that we should be, so much worried about. So we are still in touch with the Americans. They are forced to withdraw that advisory.
But even as Kimemia seemed to downplay the U.S. warning, Prime Minister Raila Odinga was reading from a different script.
Whereas the U.S. intelligence network goes beyond our borders, is active in the Middle East, is active in Europe, is active in South America, in Asia and so on, ours are active mainly within our borders. We don't have the capacity to do it. So if the U.S. is sharing that information with us, there's nothing wrong.
But with the government having spent billions of shillings to boost security, observers are wondering whether the government has really done enough.
You see, in the war of terrorism, you may win 20 times, but if you lose once, people think you are doing nothing, and that is a problem. But I can assure you that our security forces have been on top of things to ensure that this country is secured.
Kimemia spoke as 2 Iranians who were found in possession of chemicals used to manufacture explosives were arraigned in court to answer to charges of terrorism. Nairobi Chief Magistrate Esther Maina, however, adjourned the hearing after the 2 claimed not to understand the English language. They remain in police custody until their next hearing, when the state will provide a Farsi translator. The cabinet is yet to approve the Prevention of Terrorism Bill, which among other things proposes tough penalties for suspects found guilty of terrorism-related activities. For KTN Prime, I'm Asha Mwilu.
Betty Keller is now standing by with more details of the anti-terrorism bill that Asha Mwilu has mentioned in her story. Over to you, Betty.
Thank you so much, Edith. Now, the government has embarked on what it describes as a high-fashion crackdown on terror suspects and their networks in Kenya. Now, this, of course, following the recent spate of grenade attacks in the Kenyan soil, the latest being, of course, in Mombasa Sunday night that left 3 people dead. But as the Kenyan government engages gears to fight terrorism, the Prevention of Terrorism, or Bill 2012, which is due to be tabled in Parliament, is one of the key platforms helping security forces combat terror activities. Let me now take you through some of the highlights of the bill. Now, if the bill is passed, a maximum penalty of life imprisonment will be meted out on anyone convicted of the death of a person through terrorism activities and the terrorist property seized. Also, the new bill provides compensation for terror victims. This will be funded by properties seized from the terrorists, as well as fines imposed on the convicts. Well, moving on, the bill also touches on people or organizations funding terrorism acts either directly or indirectly, where a penalty of not less than 7 years of imprisonment and more than 14 years upon conviction will be passed. Now, the new bill also outlines actions that law enforcement agencies should take on persons suspected to be terrorists. Under the new bill, suspects will not be mistreated or humiliated by the police or kept in cells past the required 24 hours period unless otherwise declared by a court of law. Now, unlike the current provisions of the Penal Code, the new bill also states that courts may receive evidence, including information obtained from the government of or any institution or agency of a foreign state. Finally, the bill further requires that phone companies and banks and also financial institutions will be involved in investigations by giving personal information linked to terrorists. In essence, the Prevention of the Terror Bill 2012 that is awaiting parliamentary debate calls for stiffer and radical penalties to combat terrorism activities. Will the measures be enough? Well, only time will tell. My name is Betty Keller. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Betty. President Kibaki has rejected the miscellaneous amendment bill. This thwarts an attempt by MPs to allow themselves to move from one party to another ahead of the next general election. The President's decision does give a lifeline, though, to parliamentarians who were opposed to the strict requirements of a university degree, which the bill introduced for everyone seeking parliamentary positions. Senior reporter Aaron Ochieng reports on this new development that has brought joy to more than 80 parliamentarians who do not hold university degrees.
Although Parliament burnt the midnight oil and extended their sitting up to midnight to pass what many are calling mutilation of the Constitution to suit their personal ambitions, their efforts appears to have hit a snag, with President Kibaki rejecting outrightly to assent to the Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2012. According to a statement from State House, President Kibaki says in exercise of the powers conferred on him by Section 46 of the former Constitution, he is rejecting to assent to the bill. Kibaki also cited 5 pending court petitions in rejecting to make the amendments into law. The amendments that were passed Wednesday last week gave the MPs a leeway to move from one party to another until unspecified time before an election, and even after, move among existing parties without contravening the law. The amendments should have also barred those without degree certificates from recognized universities from contesting in any election. Speaking to the members of the press after arriving back in the country from Russia, Prime Minister Raila Odinga wouldn't have agreed more with the President by saying Kenya for a long time had only one public university and only a small fraction of Kenyans had a chance to be enrolled.
There's not been a sufficient reason why the bar has been increased. So I was saying that the people have a right to select the leadership. But if you raise the bar too high, then you're basically excluding so many other people.
The PM also accused members of parliament for passing the amendments by comparing their actions to the independence constitution, which according to Raila was mutilation of what was passed at Lancaster.
I did consult with the President. Actually, we are generally in agreement that the amendments were unconstitutional and generally they were infringing the rights of very many Kenyans.
Also rejecting the amendments is Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, who termed as selfish the move by MPs to try and force laws that will draw the wrath of the public to the august house.
Nimeona kumekuwa na hoja kali sana hii hoja ya ajabu. Hoja moja nasema wajumbe sasa hivi waruhusiwe kurukaruka kama nyani kutoka chama hiki kwa chama kile, kutoka hiki. Hiyo mimi wananchi wa Kenya wamekataa.
The only other option that Parliament has to force the amendments is to reject the President's memorandum and vote to pass the amendment as it is with a 2/3 majority. Aaron Ochieng, KTN Prime.
Well, it's a bill that has been the subject of much debate, not just in Parliament but outside as well. And that story does lead us to the big question this evening, where we ask if you support Kibaki's move to say no to party hopping. Let me just repeat, do you support Kibaki's move to say no to party hopping? SMS us your yes or no answer to the number on your screen. That's 8040, and we'll give a poll result at the end of this live newscast.
Well, just going across our borders, a landslide in eastern Uganda has buried 2 villages and an estimated 450 people, according to the Red Cross. Confirmed reports from the scene indicate that 20 people are dead and 9 injured. Unconfirmed reports suggest that 7 bodies have been recovered, although efforts to retrieve more are underway. 15 houses are said to be buried under the mud, and reports show that 29 other homes are at risk of collapse. Uganda Red Cross officials have sent a team of volunteers to assess the situation and establish the exact number of people affected, although authorities in the 2 villages say that there were about 80 households in each of the villages. A rapid vulnerability assessment is being conducted in the Namanga and Bunakasala villages, which sit on the slopes of Mount Elgon, which straddles Kenya. In March 2010, the same area was hit by a landslide, which left 76 people dead and destroyed several schools in the region.
Back home, two political parties linked to the deputy prime ministers are locked in a war of words over the alleged signing of a pre-election pact. Uhuru Kenyatta has denied that the National Alliance Party, or TNA, is holding talks with Musalia Mudavadi's UDF, as claimed by UDF members. But Mudavadi did say today that he's open to talks with Uhuru in what is shaping up as the quest to fixing the running mate puzzle.
A political standoff between the two deputy prime ministers might be cooking over the alleged signing of a coalition pact between Uhuru Kenyatta's The National Alliance and Musalia Mudavadi's United Democratic Forum Party, UDF. Uhuru has denied holding talks for a pre-election pact between TNA and UDF. Through his director of communications, Uhuru castigated UDF members Ndarago MP Jeremiah Kioni and his Laikipia counterpart Lerito Mureithi for peddling such lies, but the statement is silent on Musalia Mudavadi. The statement reads in part, and I quote, "Kioni and Mureithi are not in TNA, therefore not qualified to speak for the DPM and should stick to their UDF party," end of quote. As Uhuru spoke, Mudavadi intensified his campaign both in Teso and Uasin Gishu counties. The DPM, who was in Eldoret North MP William Ruto's home turf, was reading from a different script, extending an olive branch to both Uhuru and Ruto.
Mimi nitaongea na yeye, nitaongea na Uhuru, na nitaongea na Kenyans wengine ambao wako na nia ya kusema kwamba tuungane.
The Sabati MP likewise was at pains to shed off the State House project tag that he has been branded.
Mimi nikikutuma enda simama, wewe utakuwa ni mraji wangu. Nimekutuma uende unifanyie kazi. Siwezi kukupa chama, nikupe pesa, nikutume kwenda simama kama sikutumii.
Jirongo mambo yake, mimi niko na dawa. Yeye ni mtu ambaye anapenda pesa mingi, anapenda biashara. I have requested my brother, wewe ukiwa president, patia Jirongo nafasi ya kufanya biashara locally, nationally, continentally, internationally, hata paka into the outer space.
Mudavadi affirmed that the forthcoming general elections will be concluded at the first round with a landslide win in his favor. Samugina, KTN Prime.
The government has put off evictions from the Mao Forest just a few months to the beginning of phase 4 of the evictions. The fourth phase targets